And I was seeing a guy at the time, my ex-boyfriend, and I had asked him for cocaine, and instead he gave me heroin. And from there, it was just kind of like a wrap, What they don't tell you about heroin is it's not a one-time-a-week thing. It's an everyday thing, and it'll take everything from you. My name is Courtney Rentz. Hear my story. So my childhood was an amazing childhood, I must say. I have all really good memories growing up. My parents divorced when I was super young, around the age of 6, and I moved out to Texas with my mom and came back, and the family kind of split up from there, and then I went to boarding school. I had a lot of really good friends there, but that's when I started my drinking career, my weekend drinking career, and I was able to be very sneaky about it and keep it behind closed doors for a long time. Obviously, my friends knew, and word would get around school, but I was able to keep my dad at arm's length. So there were a couple times when we partied on campus, we would drink 4 Locos in the showers and typical teenage things. And I remember one time I escaped by the hair on my chinny chin chin. I had a bunch of friends go into this guy's van, and they were going around what's called the loop, and they left all of their beer cans and evidence in the car. And the next day, people were called to the Big Five, which was a big deal. So there were some disciplinary committees that were seen and things like that for drinking. My dad died my senior year of high school. I had just gotten senior class and student body president, so I was up on cloud 9, and I was throwing my first event, and I got that devastating phone call saying that dad had a heart attack, or she didn't really know what had happened, but I was laying there. We had a big event on our front lawn of Jet, and I was laying there on the jousting mat, and I got this hysterical phone call, and I just couldn't believe it. But I did think that he was going to be okay in the end, and he wasn't. My dad's death shook my entire world. I held on for a little while, and then my dad had really high expectations and standards of me. I was expected to perform at a certain level, academically, socially, all of that good stuff. So I wanted to maintain that same level of excellence in college. So I was prescribed Adderall, and I started abusing stimulants about 6 months into it. Pulling all-nighters, staying up and studying, and I did okay for a while, and until I didn't. I started, experimenting. I started experimenting with party drugs like cocaine and Molly and acid on the weekends, and then obviously drinking. So a rock bottom moment for me during that time was I was beginning to fail classes, which was not like me at all. So that was very disheartening, and it devastated me. It devastated me for a long time. And when I failed out, I reapplied to school, and they let me come back, and then I ended up failing out again, simply because my life was unmanageable. So things escalated when I left Tennessee and moved down to Florida. They didn't escalate right off the bat. I got down here, I had a period of sobriety, but I wasn't working a program. So I was re-prescribed the stimulants, the same ones that I had in college, and then I started drinking again, and then things escalated into heroin. I had experimented with painkillers a couple of summers prior to that. There was one night I really lost my marbles, and I was hospitalized. They Baker Acted me. After the Baker Act, I had lost my housing, and I had a little bit of money saved up, so I was kind of hotel hopping and staying in the car, and I was seeing a guy at the time, my ex-boyfriend, and I had asked him for cocaine, and instead he gave me heroin, and from there it was just kind of a wrap, Before I knew it, I was physically addicted, and I didn't even know that I was withdrawing until he told me, the sneezes, the leg aches, and it was supposed to be just a one-time-a-week thing, but what they don't tell you about heroin is it's not a one-time-a-week thing. It's an everyday thing, and it'll take everything from you. We were living in the car for a while, me and my ex-boyfriend, and my sister Marchman acted me while I was living in the car at McDonald's. So I was not too happy about that. I ended up using the day I got out. Because my sister had me Marchman acted, she also had my car towed, and the transmission was going out. So anyway, long story short, we ended up in the woods, like not too far from there. And we stayed in the woods, I want to say for like at least a year. And occasionally we'd go get hotels or whatever. Rock bottom was having that vehicle, getting it towed, not being able to take care of it and get it back up and running, and then my godmother gifting me another vehicle and choosing, instead of getting it insured and taking care of that one, I decided to get high that day in the parking lot at Publix. Using drugs, once you get to like the point of like injecting heroin and meth with the needle, like it's not fun anymore. And like I can remember I would be lying down in the tent at night and crying out to God, like, God, please make it stop. I don't want to do this. And I would shoot up and like pray to God. It sounds very hypocritical, but like it was the only coping mechanism I knew how. Like I wanted to take the place of God and control how I felt instead of working through the emotions, whatever my emotions were, because I obviously was not identifying them. So but yeah, I would cry out to God, and it would be a few months later that my ex-boyfriend would get arrested, and I would choose to go into detox for the last and final time. Oh, I wrote a goodbye letter to opiates. We did the same thing in rehab, but this one was like a little more heartfelt. Basically, you know, it opens up with, on August 23rd, I said goodbye to my best friend. I said goodbye to the one I had leaned on, and I said goodbye to heroin. I know that seems dramatic, but when you wake up and that's what you're searching for, and every adventure you're going on is so that you can obtain the heroin for that high, like it plays a big part in your life. I mean, it took everything from me, my cars, jobs. I wasn't able to gain housing again. It took relationships. It took all of my money. I went to detox, I went to rehab, and then I went to sober living. Sober living is where things got real for me. Rehab, honestly, it felt like a vacation, right? Like I had a shower, I had a bed, like I didn't have to worry about much. And then sober livings, I had to get back out and work a job and get back on medication and clean up the wreckage from the past. August 23rd will mark 2 years clean for me, which is a big deal because when I entered rehab, I wasn't even sure that I wanted to quit heroin. So I recently got a car back. I'm working in recovery, and I'm very involved with my church, and I put God first. And it's given me back so much, and it's given me a lot more than what I had before all of this. My advice to anybody who's going through the ringer is, you know, God qualifies the called, and what the enemy meant for harm, God will use for good. So your hurts, he won't waste them. So if that is you, my suggestion is put down the drugs and pick up Jesus. That's the only way I got clean, and that could be the case for you as well.